hiked over here. And it was freezing cold because they talk about how the mountains were white-capped. So it was January of 1603. And they found the river, and they named the river after they asked the friars to name it, give it a name. Everything was given a saint's name, and it was given after their patron saint, Mount Carmel, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and there became the name for Carmel River, Rio de Carmelo. And it was 164 years before anybody came back, but they wrote in their logs about this place. And so Gaspar Bartola came here in the 1770s and actually began settlement in Monterey. I say all that because it was always related to the ocean. Nobody could get here by land. And the ocean's been so fundamental to us, but we always took it for granted. But I think this is also an area that learned in a hard way how to appreciate the ocean. We learned by having the largest sardine fleet and largest sardine port in the world in Monterey crash. And there were no government bailout programs, no FEMA, no emergency response, nothing to be done. It just crashed. The sardines went away, and a whole culture, industrial culture. And when Sue and I grew up in this town, it was sort of a rivalry on the peninsula, and it was called Carmel by the Sea, and Pacific Grove by God, and then a really negative comment about Monterey was Monterey by the smell. All the canneries. And but that was an ocean event. It was a ecological event. It was a overfishing. And I think from that is grown this whole ethos, and maybe we ought to pay attention to this ocean out here that we take for granted. And what's it led to today is that the Monterey Bay area is such a destination area, and I think it's a destination. When I say to everybody, when they ask me in Congress, what's the economy of your district? I said, well, we sell scenery. And people laugh like that. And I said, well, wait a minute, think about it. That scenery has the most productive agriculture in the United States, maybe in the world. This county of Monterey grows 85 crops. There's no other county in the United States, in the world, that grows 85 crops. $4.5 billion in sales because it has a microclimate related to the ocean. This is the only place near the ocean where you have massive agriculture in California, in this 100-mile Salinas Valley. And that river that runs through it dumps into that bay, and all the pesticides and herbicides, including when they use DDT, all ends up in Moss Landing. And we've learned a lot from those negative impacts. And what we've created out of there is the largest land monitoring, whole watershed of the entire Monterey Bay. 9 counties wide is monitored, just like the Audubon bird count. We go out and take water quality samples every year to find out every little tributary that ends up dropping water into that. And no other place in the United States does that. So the oceans have been a great lesson to us about how we need to care for the land, because what we do in the land ends up in the oceans. And the ocean is 73% of the entire world. And that's why when I got into Congress, I really got interested in trying to do some master planning of the oceans. We have nothing but federal agencies that all have different responsibilities. They don't talk to each other. They go out and do conflict things. One does seismic testing and at the same time pulls fishery pots and everything off. And just, wars of essentially government agencies against one another. And this is all public domain. It isn't private ownership, so you don't get into the land use takings and things like that you do in land use. And so it's actually a very simple thing for us to govern because it's one stop. But we've got to get all those governments together, and that's what I've been trying to do by the ocean planning process. And I had a bill in Congress that came out of a study that looked at all these conflicts and recommended to the Congress what we ought to do. Our Congress in the House would not adopt the bill. I kept pressuring the White House, and finally when Obama got elected, he put together everything that was in that bill and did it by executive order. So we now have every single department secretary in the government now has a roundtable, and people on that roundtable that discuss impacts on the ocean. So whether it was ocean treaty, ocean fishing, ocean mining, recreation, everything. And the other bill that I've just gotten through the House and in the Senate, and I'm sure we're going to get it through because Senator Inoue is the author on the other side, is cleaning up this trash, all this tsunami trash, the ocean trash bill. And it is about $4 million, not a lot of money, and in fact the administration didn't put enough money into it, and we added more in Congress. But we're slowly but surely getting this job done. But it won't happen unless there's a politic for it. And the politic for oceans has been a politic around economic well-being. Let's take something out of the ocean. Let's take oil, let's take mining things, let's take fish, let's take marine mammals. Let's capture them and put them in parks. I love the Monterey Bay Aquarium, but all the people who work there, I always say, yeah, it's a jail for the fish. But isn't it wonderful that at least you can see it without having to be a diver? And it's what a great learning opportunity is for us. So all this is about politics, because politics is about leadership, of fixing things that are broken, addressing unmet needs. But you can't lead in politics unless people will follow. And people won't follow anything unless they understand. And they won't understand unless they learn. And what's so marvelous about talent that Jason talked about, the Ansel Adams, who were able to photograph, and those photographs so appreciated. People looked at those things and said, I want to see that in reality. Reading about Steinbeck in this county and all the places in this county, I want to go there. Reading Robinson Jeffers about his interaction of coastline and ocean. I want to experience that. Tonight is another one of those incredible artistic moments when we use the artists to be our teachers and to teach us how to better manage this planet. Because if we don't manage the ocean well, forget land, forget human survival. We are dependent on that ocean. We've ignored it. We haven't explored it enough. And one of the things we need in this politics, and I love space travel, and there's no, walking on the moon is great. But now we want to go to Mars. And the amount of money we're spending to get to Mars, before we even understand the ocean. It seems like we're trying to flee this planet before we even understand how to keep it healthy. And until we spend some money on the ocean, we're not going to be able to save the planet. And you are part of that. You're all political in the big political world, in big politics, not in a partisan politics. Politics of talk, politics of action, politics of pocketbook. And so today's festival and coming to Carmel and this wonderful city hosting it is indeed a great pleasure for me as a member of Congress to know that we will have a better educated electorate in an election year. That's really important. Thank you very, very much.